And on this episode of Better Than a Lecture, we're here with Daniel Vilchez, and he's a data analyst, and he's going to tell us about p-values. So when you see that p equals 0.005, what in the world does that mean? Daniel?
So p-values are a statistical measurement that is used to validate a null hypothesis. Before you conduct any experimentation on a sample or on a population, you have to determine what your null hypothesis is. And so a null hypothesis is just a hypothesis that states that there is no significant difference between two populations, or that if there is a significant difference, that it's due to random chance or to experimental error. And so we always assume that the null hypothesis is true, always. And we use the p-value to reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternate hypothesis, which the alternate hypothesis just means that the null hypothesis isn't true, that this difference that we're seeing between the specified populations is not due to random chance. So I want to be very clear, the alternate hypothesis doesn't mean that that the difference that you're seeing is related to something. It just means that we can, with a certain level of confidence, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that the null hypothesis is not true. So what is a p-value? A p-value, you'll always be hearing it referred to as a p-value, but it actually stands for probability value. And so, in academia, you'll usually hear that a p-value that is less than 0.05 is statistically significant. And which means that then you can reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternate hypothesis. So a way to explain this is that, what does this number mean? Why do we choose 0.05? This is just something that is arbitrary and that academia as a whole has accepted of being a great value for accepting statistical significance between populations. And this just means that there's a 5% chance, right? If you were to convert this decimal into a percentage, it just means that there's a 5% chance that the results that we're seeing are due to random chance or experimental error. So there's certainly some level of probability that our rejection of the null hypothesis is wrong. But the corollary to this is that we're 95% sure that we can reject the null hypothesis, that the differences that we are seeing are not due to random chance or experimental error. And so that is what the p-value is. It's used, just as in a nutshell, just to summarize, it's a statistical measurement used to validate the null hypothesis, which we always assume to be true. The null hypothesis states that the difference between two populations is not significant, and that if there is a difference, that it's due to random chance or error. When the p-value is less than 0.5, it means that there's a 5% chance that it's due to random chance. That if the null hypothesis is true, that it's due to random chance, and that we're 95% confident that it's not due to random chance, that there actually is a difference between the populations that is not due to experimental error or random chance. And that's all.
Well, that's awesome, Daniel, because I'm always sitting here wondering p equals p-value, but thinking of it as a probability makes so much more sense.
Yeah, now there's a lot of intricacies and nuances as to how the p-value is calculated, and you'll see those sheets with z-scores and probability distributions, and that gets a little bit deeper into probability theory, where you have to kind of plot what are the chances of getting different values within your distributions. But at the surface level, that's what a p-value is. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time, and this has been your host, Dwayne, and this has been Better Than a Lecture.